Well, hello there, everybody. Welcome again to another live modeling at the bench with TrekWorks. Hope you guys had a great week this week. Tonight we're going to be back to working on the Battlestar Galactica that we left off last week. Made a few more discoveries as far as working on that lighting in the landing bays, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit. I'm going to check in over at the check in on the watch page here and give a shout out to those who are tuned in with us tonight. And head back up to the top here. Let's see, we got Canadian Starships with us again tonight. We got Federation Shipyard, Omar, got Jake Demko. Hey, nice to see you, Jake. Big Stats, Rick Berger, Kenny is with us tonight, Hobby Link International, Spencer Wolf, Mark Shue, Big Stats, Alex Prevey, I hope I'm saying that right, Phil Usagi, Toby Wilson, PJC 2.0, Leona Timber Company, James Schulenberg, GB's Model Zone, Outsider 238, Aussie Trekkies here tonight, Steve Kopse, Dan Harris, Bill Hilbury, Brian Knowles, Mark Buchholz, Shane Mandeville, Mark McDonald, JD, Barry Steinledge. Got a nice crowd on hand tonight. Tonight, guys, we're gonna head over and work some more on the Battlestar Galactica. As you guys may have seen, I put out a video this week. Started on the big B-36 Peacemaker kit. I got a little bit of progress on that. I'm going to show you guys a little sneak peek before I put out the update video on that tomorrow. Um, One thing I want to get to before we move forward tonight is I want to keep my promise. Last week we had some email questions come in, and I wanted to get to those tonight before we kick everything off. I've got mainly one from a gentleman named David Peters. He's asking me some questions about building the 350 scale TOS Enterprise. So I'm just going to go down his list here. It's a kind of a long list, but we'll go through and answer these questions as best as I can. Put my peepers on here so I can see these good. The first question he has is Craft acrylic paint in heather gray that you buy in Michael's stores still your choice of paint? Um, yes, it is, Dave. I'm pretty much using that stuff exclusively now. I've got, once I figured out I liked it, I went out and bought a whole bunch of it. As I talked about last week, I think I mentioned I buy the paints from Hobby Lobby at their online site. They have a sale on the paints over there. You can get the bottles for 59 cents a bottle, so I bought a whole bunch of them. And I'm pretty much settled in on this stuff. I have a little system that I worked out with my primer, my craft paints, and now my sealer that I'm using, the Duplicolor Matte, which happens to be his second question here. Is Duplicolor Matte still good for the overcoat? I happen to like it. I think it gives a really nice kind of neutral finish. It's not too dull, not too shiny. But again, your final top coat is going to be up to your individual taste. If you want it to look a little bit more dulled down, you can use Tester's Dull Coat or something like that. I happen to like the Duplicolor Matte because it gives a really smooth finish on there. And, that's something to think about later on when you're uh, trying to keep the model clean and everything. A rough surface is going to attract a lot of dust and be hard to get off. And if you have a nice smooth surface, it'll come right off. Third question he has is, are you installing LEDs on both sides of the neck or on just one? I'm installing LEDs on both sides of the neck. I'm using little short strips of LED tape in warm white, the double density stuff. And I'm using it in two spots on each side. You can see the little pads if you look inside the neck. Um, I don't have one out right now. The neck that I'm working on is already sealed up, but just these three little light segments here, you can see where you can cut it. Two of them on each side, facing inward, and that lights up the whole neck nice and even. Doesn't seem to make it look too bright or whatever. I also do that little red light up in the corner. The one window in the corner is kind of red. I just take a little bit of Tamiya red and paint that on the inside, and the warm white does a nice job lighting that up. And then all the wires, you can either run them up, into the saucer and tie them in there for the power. You can run them straight down the neck and tie them into the lower half of the model. It says, are you using the windows that come with the kit and sanding the back sides, or are you using micro crystal clear after painting and assembly? Well, I'm using a combination, Dave. I'm all the windows on the secondary hull, the neck, the bridge area, the lower part of the saucer, and the circular part. I'm using all the kit supplied plastic glass that it comes with. Now, what I like to do is on the back side of that, rather than sand it, I just take an airbrush with some really thin down white paint, and I just really lightly dust over it on the back. And that gives me my diffusion that I'm looking for, so the lights don't look too twinkly coming through there and not too bright. And then when you when you turn everything off and stand back, the windows still look dark. They don't look white. They'll look pretty good like that. Only on the perimeter, the edge or the ring, the outside saucer ring is where I'm using um, micro crystal clear, and I'll do that at the very end. Now the three little round lights that are in the front, that in the very bow of the ship, and then that one that's on the top, the circle, I do use the kit supplied plastic glass for that too. It's just the little square windows and the small little circular windows on the sides of the saucer. And the main reason I'm doing that is that the kit parts, for some reason, they need to be sanded down on the top. The way they sit in the model, the upper edge kind of touches the saucer a little bit, so you have to sand those down. So rather than monkeying with all that, I just go ahead and use crystal clear. And crystal clear works really good because it kind of it doesn't dry perfectly clear, and so it gives you a little bit of diffusion anyway, and it works out really good. And I can do that at the very end. I use a little plastic syringe, and I just inject it into each window and wait till it kind of domes out a little bit. Then I wait maybe 10 minutes until it's just starting to settle up a little bit. Take a Q-tip with water and just kind of wipe across all of them until they're flush, and make sure I get all that excess glue residue off of there. Let it dry and you're good to go. It takes about pretty much like overnight. Like if I do that the last thing at the evening and I get up in the morning and come back out here, it'll be dry completely where they look fully lit. They might look a little dark until they fully cure. Do you use aftermarket decals, and if so, what brand do you recommend? I do use aftermarket decals. I get the decals for the model from Jerry at HDA Model Works. You can go to his website, www.hdamodelworks.com. He makes a complete aftermarket set for the 350 scale Enterprise. And the reason I like him is he has the colors looking a little bit closer to, I think, the way they should look, and the film that he's using for the decal is much thinner, so you don't get those the bad edges that you do. They've changed the kit supplied decals over time. I remember when the kit was originally released, it had a really great set of decals that I was having no problems with. And then somewhere along the line, I don't know when maybe when it turned into the 50th anniversary, they started using a thicker decal film, and they changed the colors on the decals too, where the reds on the pennants and everything, they almost look more like a maroon red and not a bright red like they should be, or an orange type red. So, but you can get those decals from Jerry. Okay, do you recommend the Paragraphics Photo Etch kit for the Enterprise? Well, if you're going to do all the extra detail in the bridge and in the shuttle bay, I would say it's necessary because you're going to need those little parts to do all your light blocking and get those screens and everything to turn out really crisp and clean. Also, they give you all the window overlays for inside of the shuttle bay, so you get all the nice edges around your windows all nice and sharp and clean, rather than going in there and trying to mask or paint that. So you basically mask off all the areas that are going to be with light coming through them, paint everything, and then you've got the little shuttle photo etch parts. You paint those whatever accent color you're going to paint them. Like in the shuttle bay, they're kind of a light gray, and then you glue those down at the very end once you're done with all your painting and everything, and then assemble it, and you have a really nice clean setup. They also give you the little piece at the tail that goes over the fan tail where the little approach lights are. Now, different masking sets are out there. I've got this one from Jerry. I've also got a set from Aztec Dummy. Those come with the tiny little masks to mask off the little approach lights on the outside if you don't want to use the photo etch part. So basically what I do there is just taking the clear, not the clear, but the kit supplied part, which is done in that pale, plastic. I'll paint all my colors on there first on the outside with the Tamiya transparent, paint. I'll do the reds, the green, and then I think the one in the center is supposed to be yellow or amber. And get those, nice and, it doesn't matter if you go over a little bit or whatever. Let those dry overnight and then take the masks and put over top of those on the outside. Then go ahead and light block paint the outside of the little curved part there at the edge of the shuttle bay opening, and paint that with some black or silver, whatever you like to use for light blocking. Then final coat it with your hull color and seal coat it with your clear. Pull the masks and you'll have nice little clean, approach lights there at the back. But the photo etch set allows you to do that without masking. So basically what you do is you do the same thing I just said, paint the Tamiya colors on there. Then you're going to paint the brass part, the color of the hull, and overlay that. It has to kind of curve a little bit, and it overlays over the top of there, and you glue it in place, and you get really nice clean lines with that photo etch part. So if you're not going to do all the extra detail on the shuttle bay and the bridge, I don't think you really need the photo etch set. It's just up to you, whichever way you want to go. Do you assemble the top and bottom of the saucer before or after attaching it to the neck? Yes, I do. I completely assemble the saucer, do all the putty work on it, get all the seams done. I didn't used to do it that way. I used to build the secondary hull and then get the top half of the saucer down on there and do all my electronics and then, run all the wires and everything in. Then put the lid down at the very end and then come back and do that seam. Well, that seam is probably the worst seam on the entire model to get to go away, because there's a, kind of a step that I call it between the saucer and the bottom and the top where it's not totally flush. So it takes 3 or 4 times of putting putty on that and going back and sanding it. And then, of course, you got to prime and paint it and everything. So I just figured out that working on it when it's on the ship like that is kind of tough, and you're shaking the model around a lot while you're sanding and all that. Plus, you're flipping it over. And so I just do the entire saucer now. In fact, I get it completely done where it's like perfect. It's all painted. Everything is done on it. The decals are on it. So basically all I have to do at the end, I'll have the 2 wires coming out of it that go to the, there's one of them is power that brings power up to the top. The other one is one wire that comes out for the flasher circuit that goes to the rear of the ship that runs those 2 blinkers at the tail section. So I'll pull those through the model, then pull the, saucer down and glue it onto the neck, and we're done. And that makes for a really nice, clean installation. Now, you don't have to putty around the where the neck goes to the saucer. There's supposed to be a little bit of a seam right there. On the original ship, it looks that way because they never showed it on the show, but the saucer is supposed to be able to separate from the rest of the ship. So having that little line right there is perfectly fine. So that's the way I do it now, and it works a whole lot better. Do you paint the outside of the model before installing the nav and strobe lights? If not, how do you mask the lights off? Yes, I paint most of the model so that all I have to do at the very end is come back and do the edges or whatever wherever the seams are. But liquid mask or even some Elmer's glue, take a little toothpick and dip it in some Elmer's glue, make a little drop and just put it on top of the dome, of the little navigation light. Let it kind of just flow down on there. I actually think the Elmer's glue works better. I haven't had a whole lot of luck with liquid mask. Whenever I use it, it turns kind of hard, and it turns out being really hard to pick off of there without leaving little pieces of it and everything. But the Elmer's glue seems to dry in a nice little shell, and usually one grab with the tweezers or whatever, and the whole thing will come off in one piece. So that's how I do that. Everything else I use these masking sets for, all the lights that are flush, or windows that are flush. Why is the smooth surface of the 50th anniversary edition such a big deal? Usually the more detail on the model, the better. Panel lines, rivets, etc. Well, there's kind of a, back and forth. Everybody has their own taste about those grid lines on the saucer. The original kit that came out had the grid lines inscribed into it. In other words, they were little miniature trenches on the ship, which aren't correct at all, because the original ship had penciled grid lines that were on the top and just sat there on the surface. There were no indented lines on the ship, so those cause shadows and everything when you look at the model in different angles and everything. A lot of people didn't like them when the kit came out. So over time, they eventually released the smooth saucer. So now you have the option of whether you want to have the grid lines on there. Personally, when I build the model, I don't do the grid lines. I've talked to many of my clients about that. The reason that I don't is that the big 11-foot ship has the grid lines on it, and even with those on there, you have to get really close to that big model to actually see the grid lines. In fact, the argument was for a long time that they weren't there because you couldn't see them at all on the TV show. That shows you how faint they are. So Matt Jeffries, the one who actually designed the Enterprise, penciled those grid lines on himself. He used a really thin architect's type pencil, and it's really hard to get a line much thinner than that. You're going to have to use some kind of a pencil or whatever. So now take and scale that down to 1/350 scale, which is just a fraction of the 11-foot model, and those lines would literally be like as thin as a human hair, maybe even thinner than that. And so from standing back from a few feet, you really shouldn't even be able to see them. So that's kind of my reasoning on that. I don't put them on. I do have the Master Replicas Enterprise, and that has the grid lines on it, and they did those as thin as they possibly could. And I don't like them on the model, which it's basically the same size as the 350 scale. From a few feet away, you can totally see the grid lines, and they like take over the saucer. They stand out way too much, which was the whole thing about scale and everything like that. So, but it's up to the individual person. The updated instructions and everything from round 2 with the new 350 50th anniversary kit give you a little template in there to show you how to do the grid lines if you want to put them on your model. But I just don't do it. Did you do any videos on lighting the intercoolers and lighting the spheres at the end of the engines? I did, but I can't remember which one it was. I've got like 600 videos on the channel now, and I just can't remember which one it was. It's one of my videos that I showed the building a TOS Enterprise. It might have been like number 22 or something like that. I did that a couple of times. It's pretty straightforward. I just laid a length of double density blue LED tape inside the nacelle facing the grills, the full length of the nacelle, and then of course had 2 wires going to those for the power. And you can set those up 2 ways. You can set them up to either where they're just connected to the power that you've got to the Bassards and they'll come on all the time, or you can run 2 separate wires down and have a separate switch, which I prefer. So you could turn those off and on, and that way if somebody says, hey, it doesn't look Canon with those blue grills, well, you push a button and they're out, and the model looks like it did on the original show. Same thing at the rear. I just used a 5mm white LED on each side. I made a little styrene disc that fits right inside that rear part and drilled a hole in it that fits the 5mm LED and just have a 5mm facing, straight behind those globes right in the center, behind them, as close as I can get. Now, the globes are molded in sort of that, hull color. It's sort of a light green gray. And you don't want to paint over those if you're going to backlight them like that. Just leave them as is and just clear coat them so they look like they're painted. And the light will come through them really nice. On the grills, since you don't get the clear parts unless you buy the Polar Lights Enterprise kit, all you have to do with the grills is the kit supplied plastic grills. I take them and I'll lay them on a really flat surface like a piece of ceramic or something like that. And I'll take my sanding block with a piece of 180 grit sandpaper on it and I'll just sand it down. Just keep sanding it until I make them about half the thickness that they are, right out of the box. And the light will come through them just fine. Take on the outside and just take your airbrush with some silver or whatever color you want to make those grills and just lightly dust over that so that when they're turned off, they still have that silver look, but don't put the paint on too thick where the light won't come through it. Do all that, and when you turn it on, you'll have a really nice blue glow coming through there. You definitely don't need to use the clear parts for that. Are there any kits with human figures for this model? No, not that I know of, but there's all kinds of 350 scale figures. I think I might have the box sitting here still. If I have it handy, I'll show it to you. Or I might have moved it. Well, that's typical. I put it away. But anyway, there's a company called Fujimi that makes 1/350 scale IJN, that's Japanese Navy figures. Those are the ones that I use. You can buy them at HobbyLink USA. I like them because they're actual 3D figures. They're not flat, like photo etch figures or some of the, I've seen some Tamiya 350 scale figures that are, they're just flat. These are actual little 3D figures, and what I like about them, you get them in all kinds of different positions. Some of them are seated, some of them are standing, some of them are standing with their hands, kind of behind their backs, like a security guard kind of guy. And even though they do have their Japanese Navy outfits on, by the time you paint like the red, blue, or yellow shirt, the black pants, and some flesh colors, and do a little bit of hair on them, they're so tiny that they look perfect. And with the seated guys, you can put those guys at the helm. You can put Captain Kirk in his chair. The little chairs that are around the perimeter of the bridge, they're actually really close to those to their workstations. And the only way you'll fit a figure in there is to cut off their legs. That put the torso on there, but they don't look right like that, so I just don't bother putting them at their workstation. I'll maybe have them standing next to it or something. Put a couple of them here and there. I usually do Spock, standing by his little station there, and Kirk in his chair. Now for Sulu and Chekhov, I cut their legs off and put them right there at the helm, but the helm is kind of blocking it, so you can't see that they don't have any legs, poor guys. But that works out pretty good. But yeah, Fujimi, 1/350 scale Imperial Japanese Navy figures, and Hobby Link USA. Um, you did a lot of weathering on one particular build. Are there any videos showing your technique? Yeah, a lot of my videos. Again, I can't say which exact one, but I do weathering all the time on models, and I'm sure there are several of my videos out there that are showing some weathering, and I'll probably be doing some here on the live show, so maybe you'll catch that for something I might be working on. And his final question is, can the refit shuttle floor transition lights be fitted to the TOS, or isn't there enough room? Yeah, there's enough room underneath of the floor. You could put some SMDs in there. You'll have to drill, some holes or whatever, and you can make your own kind of chaser effect in there on the TOS Enterprise if you want to. In fact, we're going to be doing something just like that tonight on the Battlestar Galactica. I was working on that last week, so I'll show a little bit about how I do that, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit. So I'm going to switch cameras now, guys, and we're going to head over to the other bench. Let me make that happen here. Go ahead and close out the email. And up first tonight, we're going to show you the some progress that I've got on the 172 scale Peacemaker. This is a really cool kit. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'll be putting out a video on this, and you'll be able to see it a little bit better. I'll probably post that tomorrow. I'm thinking that probably by later this week, or maybe before the next show next week, and I might even be done with this model. It's going along really well. But I'll just show you some of the stuff I'm working on. Doing some of the small little parts here, detail parts. I got some landing gear, the main landing gear here. It's kind of hard to tell on this camera, but they've been weathered, around the little struts and everything. I painted some of the little things, different kinds of, this is just a basic magnesium kind of aluminum on the main strut, and then the little shock absorber type things are done in a more of a bright type finish. I did a wash on the wheels. Now all these wheels had to be, they're all hard plastic. They all had two halves. They had to be put together, and then the seam, sanded down and cleaned up. And just kind of show you the other one here too. They came out real nice. Real happy with those. Got both of those done. They're pretty sturdy too. They're really nice, nicely done on thick plastic. Here's the nose gear. Here's the flight deck. If you guys can see that. I did just your basic painting in here. The colors that they recommended for the seats, the cushions, which are actually their parachutes, in those kind of, drab colors. Did the aircraft interior green color there. You can see we got the forward gun deal in place. A neat little feature they gave you with this kit was you got the decals for the flight engineer's console here in the back, all those little gauges, and the same thing up here. It's going to be harder to see, but the flight console, with the pilot and co-pilot, they have all their gauges in there too. So that turned out really good, and that's pretty much ready to go in the model. Just some small little detail parts, the navigator's table, and I'm not sure, there's another table that goes on the other side. Little ladder here for the forward landing gear access. I think that's where the main crew entered the plane. Here's the port side bomb bay. Little bombs painted up the recommended color, a little bit of weathering on those that you can see. Everything on here. This section right here is the only part of the airplane you can see once it's put together. So I just mainly concentrated on painting that area really nice. The rest of it I just kind of, blew some green paint in there. Didn't worry about it being super pretty. And now, a couple commenters on the channel suggested that we motorize this thing and make the propeller spin. Well, I didn't go quite that far, guys, but I can say that it's motorized. I had this covered up for a reason. I put an old RC motor in here that I had. Now, my reason for putting that in is that it's really heavy. It's the heaviest thing I could find. This is an old motor that was no good anymore from back in my RC car racing days. And it fits into the fuselage perfect here. Now, it turns out a couple people commented and let me know that this airplane indeed needed some weight in the front end to keep it down on the ground once it's sitting still. Now, I'm going to hang it from my wall, so it would probably not matter, but if I ever do want to set it down on a table or anything like that, the nose is not going to bounce up in the air. This is the heaviest thing I could find that was small enough to fit in there. So, and I can also say that I motorized it, so I kind of pleased everybody out there that wanted to see it motorized. So it is motorized in a way, but it all fits in there. You can't see it. Like I said, once this is closed up, all you can see is this area right in here. I hot glued all this in place. It's not going anywhere. Here's the lower crew area here, the radio area. I did a lot of detail painting on the back panel there. You can see all the little radio gear, more seats up here, same kind of drab colors I used. Now basically this goes like this. Let's see if I can fit this in here. I'm really impressed overall how well this model fits together. Everything's going together really great on the model kit. It all fits really well. I'm not seeing any huge issues. I test fitted everything here. I'll go ahead and there you can kind of see the double decker flight deck and the lower deck there. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see a whole lot of that once it's all together, but just checking it out here, I was doing some mocking up. And you can see, now this one here, you got to especially pay attention to. I did notice whenever I glue this together, you got to reach in there with your finger, and there's a little nub right in there. You want to make sure that flight deck is above it when you glue it together so it's not sitting in there crooked. But you can see the gaps close up really nice on this, all the way around, all the way down the hull, down in the bottom. It looks worse than it is because there's a little bit of green overspray on that, but it's going to take very minimal putty work and everything to get this squared away. So there you can see basically what you'll be able to see of the bomb bay doors, which is just about enough. That looks pretty cool. There's a big, huge wing spar piece that goes across there. So basically what I'm going to do is get this all put together. I'm going to back tape. Now this is a trick that I've learned. I'm going to share with you guys. Like you worry about, I figured out that the glass blisters go on the model from the outside. So I don't want to get a bunch of overspray when I paint this, inside of the hull. So what I'm going to do is, it's a real simple little trick. Let me show you really quick. You take some masking tape, make a small little, like a piece about that big. Say you want to cover up this little hole right here where you don't want overspray to get inside of that. Okay. You want to obviously make it not as big as that, a little bit smaller, just so it covers up the hole really good. Then take a, a little tool. Let me show you here. Anything like a hobby knife. Okay. And then just poke a really small hole right in the center of it. And what happens is when you get done, go ahead and leave it in there. Put the whole model together. Okay. I'll show you what I'm talking about here. We can just kind of test this, but let's put this together. And you can see that, let me get my tweezers here. Come on, cooperate. Okay, we got it. Okay, you can see what happens here now is that, make sure I'm in the shot here. It's in there, right? And this has all been painted now. Let's imagine that's all been painted and you're ready to clean this up. So you got this little hole in here now. You can reach in here with your tweezers and just start working that away and then get a hold of it. Now, this is where it comes in to having the, you know, the hole, I had it too big is what the problem was, because it's holding on too much. But anyway, long story short, you'll be able to get in there and pull all that tape out. It's not working as well as it should have because I made it too big. It had too much grip area. Just make it big enough where it's going to hold on, you know, and the tape won't rip like that. It'll come right out. Plus, it'll be stronger, too, when it's got all kinds of paint all over it. But you can get in there and do that, guys. It's wanting to not work for me here, but trust me, I've done this a million times, and it works great. The whole problem was I used too much tape. And now I'm going to wind up dropping it in there. But you guys get the concept. Let me try that again just to prove that it'll work. I'm going to make a smaller, get my scissors here, and I'll make this fit a little bit better, and I'll show you that it'll work. But yeah, this works really good for, you know, when you're running into this problem, when you've got interior things that are painted and you don't want to mask on the outside because, you know, the whole thing's got to be painted. And, you know, how do you do that? Well, that's an easy way. It's called back taping. Okay, I'm just going to put that on that. Oop, I might have made it too small. You'll have to fiddle around a little bit, but it's worth it. It'll save you a lot of time. Yeah, I made it too small, but just to give you an idea again, I'll show you the concept. Make a little hole in it. The critical part is to make that hole so when you first reach in there, you don't push it down into the model. You know what I mean? It's gonna get there. Get your tweezers on that, and you'll be able to grab it. Okay, and you see it pulled right out. So that's how I'm planning on painting this. Now I'm going to do that wherever I can. Now here in the Bombay, I'm just going to have to, you know, mask all that off. But down here inside these doors, the front, you know, landing gear bay, you can see I've already got that painted all nice and green in there. I'll mask all that off the same way, that back taping. Down inside here, I'm going to put a piece of tape across on each side before I close it up. All these little blisters. And then we'll be able to paint, you know, without worrying about anything. Just go to town with the paint. Now, speaking of the paint, let me clear some stuff out of the way here. I'll show you what I've got so far. This paint I'm using is from VHT. You can get this at AutoZone, O'Reilly's, a lot of different places. But this is their chrome finish paint. I really, out of all the chrome finish paints I've used, this stuff is the stuff I like the best. The main reason why is it dries the fastest. It actually dries really nice. In about a day or so, it'll dry to where you won't leave a lot of smudges or fingerprints on it. None of this stuff dries completely, though. You definitely have to seal it with something. It will dry completely, but it's going to take like months before it does. So you got to seal it. But I just want to show you how it turns out. It turns out a beautiful, you know, really realistic, you know, polished aluminum. And this camera is not going to do this justice here. In real life, this looks like a real piece of like polished aluminum. You can see the sheen that has on it. It's absolutely beautiful. Here's the tail. The tail has been assembled. I've got both the top and the bottom put together. Got my seams all taken care of. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. I'm just trying to move it around so you can see that beautiful shine on there. Now we're going to use the All-Clad Aqua Gloss on that. I talked about that a while back. That's specifically designed to cover this stuff. I tested a little bit of it and it works great. Now my problem is the bottle that I have here, it's really old. I've had it for a long time. It's been out here in the heat in the shop. You know, when I don't have the AC on here in the summertime, you can get to 130, 140 degrees. It started, you know, it's starting to turn a little bit yellow. So I ordered a new bottle of this stuff. It'll be here, I think, Tuesday. So I'll wait till I get that, and I'll use a brand new batch of this stuff when I spray it down. Now my plan is I'm going to spray the entire model with, you know, I'm going to paint the entire model this bright silver. Then I'm going to seal it so it's all settled down. Then I'm going to go back and start masking, and any of the areas that I want to look duller aluminum, I'm going to, you know, mask up the areas I want to stay nice and bright, and then the areas that I want to look more dull, I'll just hit it with some regular clear. and that will make this turn more of a, neutral kind of a dull aluminum instead of the shiny. When we pull all those masks and everything, that'll look really good. Then I'll go put all my decals down and seal it once more with this. The color that we, the areas that we hit with the regular clear coat will stay that sort of dull color, and this rest of the silver will stay really bright silver like that. So that's the plan. I think it's going to work out really good. This is going to look really cool with the, huge wing and everything on there once it's all done in that bright silver. Just to give you an idea, I'll kind of show you, mock this up real quick. You can see, I probably can't even get it all in the picture. This thing's going to be gigantic. So that's the B36 so far, you guys. I got just a bunch of small little detail parts I'm working on. I'm going to be working on those tonight after the show, probably tomorrow for a little while. And like I said, if all goes to plan, I should probably be done with this model by next week, and we can start on something else. I got a couple of new kits in the other day. One of them I'll kind of keep as a surprise, but I'm really excited about building that one, and finally got the kit, and kind of surprised I didn't get it a lot sooner. It's a really cool little kit. Has something to do with Batman. I'll give it away that much of it. But all right, you guys, I'm going to take a quick break, get all this stuff cleared out of the way, and then we'll come back and I'll set up on the bench here and start doing some work on our little Galactica again. We're coming back with working on that landing bay, and going back over it this week and looking at everything a little bit closer. I've kind of refigured how I'm going to do everything. So we'll see you with that in just a couple seconds. Be right back. Okay, everybody, back with you again, and got my area cleaned up here, so it's time to sit down and start working on our Battlestar again. Um, Still don't have my camera set up just the way I want, so I'm kind of squeezing in here. Hopefully I don't knock the camera and get you guys seasick. Okay, since we last left off, we were working on this little photo etch part here for the landing bay, and we put our decals on there. We cut a slot into it to try to get our floor lighting worked out and all that stuff. But since that time, I realized I had made a mistake. And what we were looking at, and the reason that I kind of honed in on it was that, if you guys remember, I was talking about this. Let me see if I can find the rest of this thing here. I was talking about this little notch that's in it and why it kept bothering me, why it didn't line up on the floor, why they had it there, what purpose it was. Well, it turns out that what I thought was these little slotted lights here on the bottom, which I thought were the landing bay lights, those are the ceiling. Okay, so I had this upside down. And the whole concept of what I was trying to do was like, okay, well, that's totally different. We were talking about the floor versus the ceiling. So I thought about it a little bit this week, and I started fiddling around here and seeing if I could salvage this thing. Or, the good thing is I had an extra set of decals from Jerry, which is, like I mentioned, that's great that Jerry gives you the extra decals. So I wouldn't have needed those. I just had to order a new set of photo etch because I already cut this slot into it and everything. So what I wound up doing here, I thought, well, let me see if I could come up with something. So what I did is I decided to make a false floor in this thing. And you can see we originally had the decal on there in black. It looks horrible right now because I grinded off some paint because we're going to glue something on the top. I took this little piece of the thinnest styrene that I have. And first of all, I took some tiny little round masks that I had extra for a 350 Enterprise that I used for my masks. And I used those as a guide, and I stuck them down on this. First of all, I cut this out to fit the floor. I guess I should start off in order here. I made sure that this would fit in the center of the floor and lay down on there. And once it's glued down, it's going to look, like it belongs there. I just kind of give you a basic look at it here. Like that. The floor was already black, just like this anyway. And so I took realizing I have the slot in the floor down there already, I took some masks. I wasn't exactly sure. I went back and looked at Ralph's board, and it turns out he gave me 6 outputs. So that means I could have 6 chaser light effects there going on. So I had to figure out on that floor how to space those equally apart and use 6 of them given that, that length. So you could sit down and measure it with a tape measure and mark it and all that. But the easy way I did it was I took the masks and I, put this on the floor facing, the other way, like this way, flipped over. So I was looking at it like this, basically, from the bottom, okay? And that way I made sure that my holes were going to be centered and they were going to be straight and fit into this slot that I've got opened up here. So I started off with just a basic, it's white styrene is what it was, really thin. Couldn't tell you how thin. It's just the thinnest stuff I got. It's almost paper thin. And then I put the little masks on there, and then I was able to move those around, with my tweezers and get them spaced apart and straight. And once I finally got them where I liked them, I went ahead and painted this whole thing on the top with black, light blocked it. Then I sealed it with some of my clear. Then I pulled the masks and came back and took a tiny little drill bit and drilled in the center of each hole, or each, round spot. Now, the masks probably would have been okay, but I thought that they were going to be a little bit too big. That was the smallest circular mask that I had. And when I pulled them off, the edges got just a tiny little bit jagged. I mean, you would have never been able to tell unless you looked at them with like a pair of magnifying goggles. But when they light, you wouldn't have been able to tell at all. The light would have blinded you from being able to see that. But I wanted them to be perfect, so what I did is I drilled them all out with a really small drill bit. So I've got holes in them right now. I went back and painted it again with black and, made the whole That way I didn't have a little extra ring around each hole, if you follow me, where it was originally white. Painted that and got it all sealed back up again, so it's ready to go. So it can be put in here now like this. We flip it back over now, and we got the side up that we want, and we stick it in the floor. And the plan is now is to glue this to the floor like that. Okay. Then we can come on the bottom here. I'll take some of my solar resin, and I'm going to fill each one of those little holes with a dab of little resin and cure those. Then we can glue an SMD, you know, right on each one of those holes. And those have to go to our control board, and we'll get that 6-light chasing effect that'll be going right down the center of the landing bay. Now, laying this in here like this, you'll see, whoop, this is the wrong end. This is the end that I've got to use. Actually, it's not that one either. It's this one. Okay. This sits in here perfectly, just like it's supposed to. Okay, it'll drop down in there. You can see it clears those little pegs. The notch that I was talking about, now once this is bent over, let me get this done here. There goes our photo etch again. Bent it too many times. It's okay, the decal's still holding, and I'll be able to put a little glue on that. You can see that the notch that's there, it's got a little bit of piece of decal film I got rid of, but the way that this sits like that, when it'll drop all the way down, it clears the peg on that side, and the other one on this side, it's got a little notch for that, and now it totally makes sense to me why they did it like that. Okay, so that was the problem. So this is all figured out now. Like I said, the floor here has this, you know, V. So if I make sure and keep my, well, we will. I mean, we're going to glue them in. They'll be right in the center, so there's just enough room for some 0805 SMDs to clear and not have the floor be bowed up in the middle. You know what I mean? So when we glue our SMDs on here, we're actually going to glue them to this piece. They'll be in there nice and, you know, there'll be clearance in there, and it'll all sit down there like it's supposed to. So now we have these slotted deals for the overhead lights, right? So I'm going to be taking a piece of clear styrene, gluing it over the top of those so it'll make the lens, and then I'll just dust over that with some of my white paint, like I talked about on the how I do on the hull of the Enterprise, and that'll diffuse it. And we've already got our overhead lights put in place here, these 05s that I planned on using, this little strip, and that'll light the whole ceiling. So we're going to get our lights at the top, and we're going to have our little approach lights at the bottom. So the next step that I want to do now is I want to get this floor glued down in. So I'm going to get some CA glue, and we'll get that done. Then after that, we'll follow up with some of our solar res. I'm going to get a little toothpick here and a piece of paper so I don't make too big of a, I don't want to shoot the glue right out of the bottle onto that. It's going to give me way too much glue. So let me get a toothpick here. Get that ready to go. A piece of paper. Okay, and we'll make a little puddle here. And then apply that on the floor. Once I get that glued in there too, it's going to make it, right now this thing is kind of flimsy because I cut that slot in there. So I'm going to have to do the same thing all over again on the other side, but that's all right. Now I've got a plan. I've got it figured out. I wanted to experiment on this one, and if it didn't work, I was going to go ahead and spring for a new set of photo etch and, you know, come up with a different plan. But I think this is going to work, guys. I think it's going to work just fine. I was worried that the you know, that the floor was going to stick up too high, but it's not. I used a really thin piece of styrene, like I said, and once it's all in there, you're not going to be able to tell that it's a false floor or a different floor. It'll work out real good. All right, I'm probably only going to get one shot at this, so I want to make sure I do it right. Get this down in here lined up. It's got two little notches on it where the very tip of the floor is notched just a little bit. Just going to give this a hold for a minute or two. I don't want to spray any kicker on this because it could mess up my decals there. So we're getting the floor down in there. It's already sticking pretty good. Managed to not get any glue stains on it, which is always a good thing. So now I can come from the back side here, and I'm just going to take my CA here and just go in these little corners here a little bit and get some extra help on the back side here. And just help hold it in place. Make sure I get down to the very end so it never winds up popping loose on us and springing up. Once this is dry, this is never going to come apart. Okay. So we got that. Now from this side, I can probably spray a little bit of kicker on there. I think I'll go ahead and do that. Boy, I got to fix my camera situation. I'm about tripping over myself every time I walk in and out of here. It's a tight squeeze. Okay, we'll just put a tiny little bit of kicker on that. And that'll be good to go. So next, we can come back with our solar res. Grab that real quick and my little flashlight. And we'll make our lenses for the get a little puddle. This stuff is super, super thick. It's like molasses. Now, like I said when I talked about this before, you can they recommend on their website if you want it a little bit more runny, get yourself a some nice hot water, a little cup, and set this in the cup, and it'll thin it right down. It'll flow a lot better. If you want it thicker to make little domes and stuff like that, put it in a little cup of ice water. Let it sit for a little bit, and it'll thicken right up. We just don't need very much of this at all. We just need a little tiny puddle here. And again, the beauty of this stuff is that you can work with it as long as you want. It won't do a dang thing until you hit it with the UV light. It won't dry at all. You can wipe it off if you get too much. It doesn't seem to attack paint or anything like that, so it won't smear. It's really good stuff. Okay, we're just going to get a little drop of this stuff and then dab it on here. Each one of these little spots. You guys can see what I'm doing, hopefully. Just making a nice little dome on the top of that. Make sure there's no air bubbles in it or anything. Looks good to me. All right. Now we'll hit it with our UV. I'll have to see if I want to diffuse this or not. I may want just the SMD, coming straight up through it. If it's going to be bright enough, but I'm sure it's going to be plenty bright. I don't want it to be too bright. That's the whole thing. This takes about, I usually give it a little bit longer. They say like 10 to 15 seconds. I usually do about 30 seconds or so. Okay, and that'll do it. Now you can see from the top side there, nothing leaked through or anything. They're just beautiful little crystals that are in there. Um, Let me get the flashlight and I'll show you what it looks like. We can turn this overhead light off here, and that might help it show up a little bit better. If you guys are seeing that, and you'll see this, chaser effect with just one light at a time. It's not looking as nice because it's lighting up too much, but you're going to get this, really nice little chaser effect on the floor down there now. So I think we've got it licked, guys. I think that's going to work. It's not quite exactly the way I was, thinking of it, but at least we'll have some kind of a chaser effect going on in there now. And the nice thing is with that solar res penetrating all the way in there and coming to the surface in here, the light's going to come to the surface. So like if you look at it at an angle, like if you're looking in those bays and it's going to be kind of a flat angle, that will still show up really good. If you're using, if they're too recessed or whatever, they won't show up very well. And if you use fiber optics, whenever I'm doing these chaser lights, like in the shuttle bay of the Enterprise or whatever, I like to put actual SMDs right there, not fiber optics, because fiber optics will only look good like almost looking straight down on it. If you look at them too far from the angle from the side, there are, you can barely see them because they don't emit any light from the side. So that's pretty much it for that. Now what I'll have to do here is clear off this piece of excess film. I think what I'm going to do right now is get this baby glued on here. I can do this without ruining it. Right now the only thing holding that other piece of brass on there is the decal. It's completely broken loose. Now the next one I'm going to remember, I mean, we've done all of our experimenting and everything. I'm not going to be bending it that many times, and we shouldn't have a problem. I'm trying to get this off of here without. Okay, I got that gone. So it's going to basically sit something like this. Sorry, I'm off camera for a second, guys. I'm just checking it out here. Yeah, that's going to look really cool. Okay, so while I'm at it here, let me get a little bit more of my solar res. Now I like to use this solar res to glue my photo etch together. It sticks to this brass really, really good. So I'm going to make another little puddle here. Get my toothpick handy. This is going to be a little bit tricky because with this thing not being attached like it's supposed to be, I have to get a little corner started and then go from there. Okay, I'm going to have to hold that with my finger. Get my flashlight. And what we'll wind up doing here, I'm just tacking it together almost like a welder. What we're going to wind up doing here is we're going to wind up putting a bead all the way down wherever these seams are, and then back painting that so we don't have a light leak there. If you guys see that part of it. Okay, now let's get another corner over here on this other side, I think, and that'll get us kind of squared up. You can see there's these little notches that it sits in for it to be just right. Okay, and like I said, the beauty of this stuff is I'm able to fiddle with it and not, like if I was using CA right now, it would have already grabbed on me and it would have been a nightmare. So I'm still able to adjust it and move it around a little bit. Now I'll hit it with this. So far so good. Okay, that's about all that needs. We'll go up here to this other corner now and try to get this lined up. So I'm going to run a bead all the way down on that top corner. All right, same thing here on this side. Make sure she's squared up. Looks pretty good. All right, it's getting stronger by the minute. Now I'm going to go across here because that actually that seam is broke. I mean, it shouldn't be separated. It should just be folded. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that too. Looks like I need some more res here. All right. Let's see these corners here. You got to completely box this thing in, otherwise you'll have light leaks. Just putting a bead all the way across. All right, now the two sides, and we should call it a wrap. Doesn't have to be pretty here on the back. Not going to see all that. I'm just making sure I'm not going to get it, I'm not getting it on too thick, so it might interfere with something on the inside. If it happened to, you can take your little Dremel tool, and this stuff dries like brick hard. I mean, like super hard. So you can grind it down. Okay. Okay, just one little corner to do. I'll have to go over it again, shine a light in there. What I'll do next, not here right now, but what I'll be doing is I'll be taking a little paintbrush with some black paint, just painting these seams, and then hitting it with a light, see if there was any light leaks. If there is, I'll have to dab a little bit more of this stuff on there. But I think I got it pretty good. You always have to go over that a couple times. All right. Now let's kind of test fit it again. Fits in there nice and tight. Good. Yeah, the floor sits right down like it should. Wow. That is going to look neat, guys. It really is. It does give a really good illusion of, put the roof on it here and see. That's the opening. We're going to move back over to the other bench here in just a second because I'm going to get Ralph's control board out and show you that and talk about the wiring schematic and everything on it. I'll test light this over there with my where my power supply is, and we'll be able to see the overhead lighting and how that's going to look. I can't put the SMDs in there yet because I've got to run. Now you can imagine what this is going to be, how much fun this is going to be to wire this. Each SMD's got to come all the way out, all the way up the arm. You know, these arms that are on the side of the ship, and the board's going to be mounted inside the model right about in here. So I've got to run, I don't want to solder my SMDs up or anything yet because I want to mount the board and then run all the wires up there and get them all nice and neat before I close everything up. But we'll show you the board and everything and talk about the plan for how it works and all that, for those of you who aren't familiar with setting up a Tenna Controls board. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. I got the shiny spots here on the top. I'm going to hit this with some dull coat and get rid of that. Then I got to make, I'm going to take a piece of clear. I guess it's over on the other bench, but I've got some super thin clear styrene. I'll glue that down on the top of this, dust over that with some white, and that'll diffuse our light. There's going to need to be a piece on the back side here, but we're going to have those really nice lights trailing off into the distance or whatever for the ceiling. It does really give a really neat forced perspective look. I think it's going to look pretty darn cool once it's all said and done. Yep, I think so. All right, you guys. Going through everything pretty fast tonight. I'll take another quick break and get everything moved. I got to move the camera and everything. Don't want to bump you guys around for that. Get the camera set up, pointed at the other bench, and we'll take a look at the control board and we'll do a little, let me get this put in here again. We'll do a little test lighting on this thing and show you what, a little sneak peek about how it's going to look. Okay, be right back, everybody. Okay, you guys, back with you again. Sorry for the little delay there. I had to get things reorganized here. Um, Let me see if I got the camera in a good spot here. Pretty good. Let me see if I can zoom in on that just a tad and you guys can see a little bit better. There, I think that'll work. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got the let me get this other screen back down so I don't think I'm on this delay thing. Okay, so what we've got here is this is a little custom-made board that Ralph at Tenant Controls made for me. Always does great work, like usual. He's my best buddy. He always hooks me up with this stuff. I believe it's one of his existing boards, and he just rearranged some outputs on here for me. So you can see he's kind of giving me his own personalized schematic here. We've got 6 outputs for our chaser effect, and then I asked him to do a couple of more outputs on here. Actually, one more for some strobes. We're gonna. The client actually wanted to have some blinking strobes on the ship. I can add more onto there as he's noted on these instructions. So we've got 1 through 6 here. Now it's important, as I said. Now when I go to wire this, I got to make sure that starting off with number 1, then number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 on on down the line, that number 1 starts off at the very forward part, and then number 2. That's why you can see I don't want to put all the SMDs in it now and then try to sort out all those wires. I'm going to wind up doing one at a time. My plan is I'll have the the model all ready to go. I'll have the top of it open, have the board in there, and the arms attached, the upper half of the landing bay in there, and I'll be running all my wires through and connecting them one at a time to make sure I get it right, not trying to sort it out after I got all the wires pulled through all at once. So the way this board is set up, you got these little terminals here. You use a miniature screwdriver, loosen these up, slide your wires in, bury your wires, slide them in there. Now, usually, this is fine, but what I always like to do, I'm just picky that way, I will take my solder iron, and once I get all these in and locked down, and when it's right and I know it's working properly, I'll dab a tiny little bit of solder into each one of these terminals to make sure that that wire is soldered into there and that it can't come loose later on. Got the 2 power wires coming in here, plus and minus, 9 volts, and then our outputs and everything. So the way the board is laid out per the instructions here, we're using number 4 and number 5 for the number 1 and 2, and then coming over on the other side, we're using 3 on number 7 and 4 on number 8 and so forth up until number 10. Number 12 is the output for the, you guys can see that on there. That's 12 right up there in the corner. That's the strobe output. So it's basically controlling the negative side. The plus side of all the LEDs gets hooked up to the main power coming in. All the grounds go to this board. Okay, so it's pretty easy to figure that out. Meantime, let me strip these wires here, and we're going to go ahead and light up our interior of our landing bay there with our overhead lights. And just give a gander at what that looks like. It might be really hard to see in there with this camera. Hopefully my better camera will capture it, but these webcams are kind of limited, but we'll see if I can get you guys a shot of it. Now, depending on how bright this is, I'm sure I put more than enough light in there. It may be too bright at 9 volts. So I can always resistor that down and make it dimmer. Okay, we're facing backwards here. Okay, I'm not getting a whole lot of light in there. So I can see right now, it's the first time I experimented with it. Let me turn it the right way. Everything's backwards on camera here. The other way. Okay, you can barely see the chaser lights on the ceiling. You guys see them in the very back? Let me get up a little closer here. You can barely see them. And we got some light leaks. I knew we would have that. But the ceiling lights are not lighting up very bright. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to reposition those. I can see that. I'm going to have to get them basically right over top of the right over top of those lights. I've got it down the center and it's being blocked quite a bit. So a little bit of readjustment there, but just looking at this, I can see that that's going to work out really, really good. Let me try to get you in on this again. God dang, it's hard to aim it. I'm wanting to go the opposite direction. But you can see the lights lighting up, trailing off in the background there. So I just got to figure out how to get those a little bit brighter. And I'll be able to do that. Like I said, I'll move them right over the top, and they'll come all the way out to the end out here. I think I've got it set too far back. It needs to come all the way up to the very front, and then maybe one strip on each side, and that'll give us plenty of light. You know, I don't want to blow it up. I don't want it to be too bright in there, you know. For a crewman standing in there, it's just light enough where you can see, you know, the whole bay, and you can see the floor and all that. But yeah, that's going to look really cool, though. I can see the concept of it. It's going to come around, guys. Don't worry. Whenever you do this kind of stuff, it's always a little bit of fiddling around like that. You're never going to get it just right the first time. If I ever do another one of these, I'll know exactly what I want to do the next time. But that's part of the fun of custom lighting. You know, you gotta experiment a little bit. So let me think here. I can well, why not? While we're sitting here, I'll just let me grab some. We'll go ahead and test out a couple of these. Let me get this disconnected. Burn a little time here. I'll go ahead and hook up the board. Let me make sure I got a gotta dig out my miniature. I got a real tiny screwdriver in here that'll get in there. I haven't used it in a while. I can find the darn thing. There it is. Okay, that'll adjust our little set screws. Like usual, I used it for some putty or something. Got a little bit of putty on the tip. Get that cleaned off. And I'll grab my, got my wrapping wire here. Just make a short little segment. Don't want to waste a lot of wire. Like I said, I don't know how much wire I'm going to need. You know, I got to lay this inside the hull and figure all that out. Plus, I got to get all my LED strip put into the hull and start putting in fiber optics. That's what we'll probably work on the next episode. But I'm just going to make my ground wire first. And come in right here. I'm going to strip that a little bit more and double that wire over. This wire is so thin. Okay. Now, as I said, I'll usually make a little loop like that. And probably impossible to see on that camera. I'll dab a little solder on that and make it, you know, nice and strong. Then I'll try to put it in here. But just for tonight, I'm just going to do it like this. Might have to back this screw up a little bit. Okay. And then once I get that in there and everything, I will, on the final process, I will just lightly touch my solder iron on there to let that tin, and then that wire is never going to go anywhere, and it's in there. I just don't totally trust those set screw things. They're probably just fine, but don't want to have one of them come off inside the model. That would not be good. Okay, I've always soldered everything. Back when I was a car mechanic, the guys used to, we were doing a lot of, I was putting natural gas stuff on cars, making them run on natural gas, and you had to tap into the, that's where I learned to become a solder fanatic. You know, they used to have those little connectors that they're kind of blue, you know what I mean, the blue plastic, and they fold over and they crimp onto a wire. You crimp them with a pair of pliers. There's an inner metal part that's supposed to bite into the wire, you know, then you got another wire coming off of that. Well, those would always fall apart. So guys that were doing the conversion and using that method, the cars kept coming back where something was wrong, you know, the wire came off. So I started soldering everything, and I never had a car come back because of a loose wire. And I've been a fanatic over it ever since. It's a little bit overkill sometimes, but okay, so we got our black wire and our red wire now. Let's cut these and make them even. So we got our power coming in. Let's grab a couple SMDs. These are 0805 white, which is what I plan on using, so this should be good. And if we don't sit here for 3 hours untangling them again like we did that one episode. There we go. Okay, so we'll do 2 of them just so we can see the chaser effect. Let's see, so we're going with number 4. Number 1 is going into channel 4. Okay, so has he got the hot going in there? Okay, let's see here, Ralph. Shows the ground coming around here, tying in. Okay, so it looks like the plus side goes in. Channel number 4. Okay, let me get this worked in here. Okay, gave that little tug, so we're hooked up there. And grab my lighter because that's the only way to strip those wires, and I never keep it over by my bench for some reason. Okay. So our ground, we're just tying it into the ground coming in. Let's connect that here. Again, guys, I'm not being real pretty. This is just temporary. Just to do a demo for you guys. Okay, we'll take our second one. Again, this has 6 outputs for this chaser effect. Okay, so we want to go into number 5. Why that's not going in as deep as the other one did. There it goes. Okay. That's nice and secure. Okay, same thing, ground wire to the other, same one we did last time. I'm going to hook these up and then we'll show you the chaser. Then I'll pop them back out and we'll go up to the strobe circuit and we'll just run that real quick and show you the strobe effect. All those lights will all connect together. I'm not sure how many strobes I'm going to put on it yet. I haven't made up my mind on that. Don't want to go too much. The original ship didn't have any strobes. That's a client choice. So we talked about that. I told them it'd be okay to do it. Of course, I always let the client decide what they want, but I talked them out of doing too many because I think the model would look funny with, it's not that big of a model, you know, that the Battlestar is only like maybe that big, and too many strobes on it's going to take away from the model and look like a blinking Christmas tree if we do too many. Okay, so now we can connect our power. Shut the power off first. I'm kind of curious of what kind of rate. I don't remember if I talked to Ralph at all about what kind of speed I wanted this thing to chase, but hopefully, knowing him, he probably put it in a pretty good spot. Okay, let's get these LEDs. Let me grab a piece of tape. Get these locked down so we can see them in a good angle here. Okay, hopefully those are still in the picture. Yep, looks good. No, we should get... Okay, so we only got one working. Probably my ground, I'd be willing to bet. Why are we only getting a... Okay, why am I only getting one here? The wire not stripped. I think that might have been what it was. Let me kill the power here. Before you, whenever you're setting this stuff up, before you blame the board for something not working right, always go back. Now, Ralph has always been great about, you know, technical assistance. Before you call him and look silly by wasting a lot of his time when it turns out to be something that you did wrong, go back and double check all your stuff. Okay, where's my other ground wire at here? Hiding underneath. Okay, let's try this again. I had a feeling it was the ground. I mean, I don't see how I could be off on the positive. Should be making contact, but maybe it's not. Maybe I crimped it down onto the wrong spot. Okay, let's hook up the ground again. There we go. It was the ground. So you can see we'll have 6 of them doing that. You know, a nice little boop, 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 all the way up the landing bay floor. Hopefully you guys are seeing that. That'll look cool. Okay, so there's that. We know that works. Let's unhook here. And I guess I'll just leave those taped down. All I have to do is move these. Where's my little guy at? Here we go. Let's go ahead and unhook these. Now I want to make sure he's got them the same over here on this other one. Okay, I'm curious about this now. Okay, for some reason, he's got it different on this side, which is, I'm glad I checked it. See, if you notice up here on the schematic, he's got the plus being tied in and using the ground off of the board, which is the opposite of all this other stuff. I'm not sure why he would have done that, if that's correct, but I don't think we can hurt anything by hooking it up that way. Let me try it and see what happens here. I hope I don't hurt anything by doing it like that. I've never seen him have a board like that before where he had the output set up different on one side or the other. You know what, guys? Rather than doing that, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to have to give Ralph a call or email him. I don't want to fry this board. I mean, I'm bringing power in. I mean, it shouldn't hurt anything, but man, I don't know. That's what I'm seeing here. I mean, you can see over here you got the ground wire coming around, tapping off of it here, coming around, and then we're connecting the ground, and then we're going to the, I use the plus side of the LED into the hole. Over here, we're doing it the back opposite of that. It's plus tapping off of it. And the ground. Well, we've taken other risks on this show, guys. I guess we'll take one here again. All right, let me stop and think about what I'm doing here. We got these grounds that need to come off. And these are going to have to go to the board. I'm going to re-strip that one. Get those twisted together. Make me a little loop. And we want to go into number 12. Okay, that seems secure. And now this time we're tapping into the red for our positive side of the SMDs. I'm sure he had his reason for doing it like this, if this turned out to be right. Okay, so we're in there. Got our ground. Okay, I mean, theoretically this should work, but we'll see. Let me turn this around so I can get at it. Now these, if these are going to be right, they should both blink at the same time. We shouldn't get the chaser effect like we had on the other one. They should both blink like a strobe effect. Make sure we're not going to touch anything. Okay, here goes nothing. All right, well, they work. Nice strobe effect. I like the timing on that. So, yep, he has it that way for a reason. We followed the instructions. Ralph rarely makes mistakes on his schematics, so I just didn't. I want to make absolutely sure I wasn't going to backfeed power, you know, the wrong way into the board or something, pop it like a, you know, peanut. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, you can see that as bright as these are too, that I'll be using, you know, fiber optic on the model, but I don't want too many of these on this ship. It'll start looking kind of silly. But there you go, guys. There's a basic overview. Now the concept that I just showed you right here is pretty much the same on all of Ralph's boards. They're all pretty much the same. He may have it where there may be an existing harness on them already that you've got to solder to, but just follow these guides. Now, the nice thing about this, I guess I can kill this now. The nice thing about this is that this is just a custom thing he did for me, and he knows that I'm used to working with his stuff. But when you get his regular instructions with a regular board that he sells, you'll also get written instructions to tell you exactly which wire to hook up to which. Like it'll say orange wire to this, and you know, green wire to this, and everything. So, but pretty straightforward, guys. And again, Ralph, great customer service. So if you do have a question, try to figure it out yourself first. But if there's something questionable that you're definitely concerned about, you know, especially you don't want to burn up the board, because that involves whole process of sending it back to Ralph. He has to troubleshoot it to find out what happened, you know, and send it back to you. That takes a lot of time and everything, and you don't want to do that unless you have to. So go back and double check all your stuff. 90 times or 9 times out of 10, it's the ground for some reason. It's just the darn ground that's not set up right. Okay, guys, so there's that. There's the Tenna Controls board. Next week we'll come back and I'll have the lighting for the ceiling worked out on this thing. we'll show you that. I'll probably be up to the point where I'm going to start putting in fiber optics, get the board figured out where I'm going to mount it and all that, and then that, you know, the model will actually start coming together. You have to do all this stuff, all this homework before you can start building anything when you're going to do this kind of lighting. So just to, you know, that's just a part of it. Um, I always enjoy it though. I always enjoy something that's new and experimental. You know, the engineering you have to work out to try to make it work and everything. And like I said, make a few little adjustments. Sometimes your first plan's not always what you end up with. But now once I get all this figured out, I'll be able to do the exact same, repeat that whole process on the other landing bay. And we'll have a model here that's really cool when it's done because like I said, I don't think I've ever seen anybody do that before on this model where you got the actual landing lights in there on something, you know, because this thing is tiny. It's really a small kit. So, all right, guys, one more break. I'll get myself situated here. We'll come back and we'll do our final chatting with the group here, give a few more shout outs and maybe answer a few more questions if anybody has any. So we'll see you that for in just a couple seconds, everybody. Right back again. All right, everybody, back with you once more. I'm going to hop over to the watch page now and see what everybody's talking about and give some shout outs. Okay, we got some new people here. 134 people with us tonight. That's good. Anybody tell me what we peaked at? Always interested in knowing that. Let me see. Going back up here a little ways. Make sure. Okay, we got a couple new people. We got David O'Flanagan. Nice to see you, Dave. Sunny Shade. Hey, Ralph's here. Well, Ralph, my ears were probably ringing. You're probably screaming at me which wire I was supposed to hook up there. Nice to see you tonight, buddy. Haven't seen you on with us in a while. Love the little board. It worked out great. Uh, JGG 1701, S197AQ, General Hobbies, Modeler X, Alex Prevey, Buckethead, Spencer Wolf, Mark Shue, Andy Grams. Let's see, Barry Steinledge. I remember Barry being with us before in the old show. Nice to see you again, Barry. Dan Harris, Max Graham, Rick Berger. Nice to see you, Rick. Richard Pacheco, Hobbies North. T Commando, there's another old timer. Nice to see you, Commando. Let's see, Max Graham, Don Rose. Bunch of new people here with us tonight. That's pretty cool. Matthew P. Ring, Dave G. Phil Usagi says, "Hey Ralph, you ever get nervous watching Boyd put together one of your items live?" He probably does. I've got a pretty good track record though in probably I would say close to probably easily over 100 boards I've used from Ralph. I've only fried one, and that was my own fault. I was doing an Enterprise refit. I was down to the last part of all the electronics in the model, getting ready to seal up the saucer, and I was going to do a little bit of soldering, because the way I built is I had the whole model sitting there. I had the lower half of the saucer open. I was going to flip the lid over, and close it all up. And I had to solder two little wires. Well, I was sitting there watching all the lighting, so I had it powered up. The board was hot, and I'm soldering these two wires, and I, in slow motion, watch one little drip of solder drip off of my solder iron, land right on the board in a spot where it was like critical apparently, because the minute it hit it, all the lights started flickering and went out, and a little miniature mushroom cloud popped out of it, and it gave you that, that acrid burnt electronic smell. So yeah, never solder on your boards when they're hot. Never solder over top of your board or anything like that. Never made that mistake again. But that was how I fried the one board. Otherwise, pretty good track record. Hey, we got Armando tonight. Nice to see you, buddy. Looking for another update on that Klingon bird of prey. Let's see. UFO Me Now. Jason Yates. Thomas Johnson. Melius Scotorum. Love you guys' handles that you come up with. Dale Strange. Yep, it was that magic smoke, Mark. Smells like ozone. Anybody have any questions? Now's the time to hit them. Just rolling around here, seeing if I miss anything. David O'Flanagan, I see your message here about activating your account on the model shop page. Dave, is that your email name? Is it like David O'Flanagan at gmail.com or something like that? just put it in down below here. Um, I explained this before, but the reason it takes me a long time to get people activated on that is that I have to manually activate everybody. I have to, you know, uh, I see their email on there. They want to join. Um, I send them a return email. Sometimes I don't always get around to it right away. And if they don't answer, then I don't register them because it's too many people, spamming and everything like that. So I need to make sure it's definitely not a bot or something like that. Once I get a reply on the email, I go ahead and register them. But if you're over there under that name, I'll sign you up. Sci-Fi Model Shop says, why a lighter for stripping wires? Uh, the wiring on the SMDs is just so tiny. It's hairline thin. If you try to just pull on it or pull on it with your, a tweezer or your fingernails or whatever, you'll break the wire. You got to burn that stuff off. That's the easiest way to get it off of there. Thicker wires, I just, the regular wrapping wire that I use, I can just pull that off with my fingernails. T Commando says he usually works with spray cans when he builds models. Since I can't justify having an airbrush, any tips for getting a smooth finish? Um, you're going to get what you get with a spray can, T Commando. I mean, little practice and you get better at it. But you can never expect a spray can to lay down the same as as good as an airbrush because it just doesn't spray in that fine of a mist. Now you can help things by in between coats. If you're going to put multiple coats of your color on, you can do a little bit of wet sanding with some really fine paper like 1000 grit. So put your first couple of coats down, let that dry really, really good, then go and wet sand it real carefully, and then put another coat. You're still going to wind up with a little bit of texture in the paint, but if you keep building it up more and more and more, it keeps getting rougher each time you put a new coat on if you don't sand it. A lot of people don't sand their paint. I actually, on a lot of models I build, I sand the paint as well as the primer in between coats. That will help you a little bit, but there's only so much you can do with a can. The airbrush sprays it a much finer mist. Spencer Wolf, what kind of paint or clear do you recommend using underneath of the Mackenzie iridescent paints? Underneath of the iridescents, whatever you want. It's all, like I said, that comes down to your own taste on how much of a shine you want on the overall model. If you use a gloss, it's going to be glossy. If you use I would say try the Duplicolor wheel satin finish that I showed you that I'm using. Test spray that on something and see how you like the sheen on that. Test spray it on some stuff. Take your hull color, spray it on a piece of cardboard, spray it over it with your clear that you're intending on using, and just eyeball it and say, okay, do I like this or not? As far as brand, Duplicolor. I've just found that it's, they make a gloss, they also make a satin, and they make a complete dull. But I've just found that Duplicolor seems to be pretty stable as far as it doesn't react with a lot of stuff. These questions go by so fast. I always feel guilty after I go back and watch the show the next morning. I don't like to watch my own self on the show, but I like to go back and watch and see all the comments. And I find that I miss a whole lot of them just because they go, especially questions, because they go by so fast. Andrew Burt asking, have I ever tried to make my own 555 IC timer? No, I haven't. I haven't tried any of that, Burt. I get all my stuff from Tenant Controls. There are several, probably a couple of hundred YouTube videos that show you how to do that. From what I understand, the 555 is a really simple chip to use. A lot of times those chips when you're going to use the old 555 though, you're going to use capacitors and stuff like that. And I don't go for that anymore because capacitors wear out over time. So like if you got a certain blink rate on a capacitor will change over time, and that value will it'll probably get more resistance, or I'm not sure, an electronics expert can tell you. It'll either get less resistance or more resistance as it breaks down over time. So that blink rate's going to change. It's going to either get faster or slower over time. Whereas one of these boards is fully transistorized, it's digital, it's going to be totally stable and rock solid its whole life. Plus, it'll never get hot. Um, a lot of that stuff is handy for just doing your own homeschool stuff or your own little projects, but a lot of it's really getting outdated. The digital boards that are out there now are so inexpensive, and they're rock solid as far as quality and longevity. There's just not a point to using that stuff anymore. But to each their own. If that's what's working for you, you can stick with it. But I used to have a Radio Shack, a couple blocks from here, and it's been probably 10 years now. But I mean, I used to be able to go over there and buy all those little tiny components, to do all that kind of stuff. But they're long gone now too. I don't know, Leona. Kenny is doing a great job on the Halloween thing every year, and it's a lot of work for me to set that up every year. Um, I really enjoyed putting together the slideshows at the end and showing everybody's work, but long as somebody's doing that, I'll leave that up to them. I mean, I just like to see where somebody gathers up everybody's work and puts it all together and puts on a presentation of it. Kenny did a great job of that last year. Um, It'd be nice if I just got to build and put my model in there and that'd be it, because it's a heck of a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it though. I had a blast every time we did it here. Kind of missed the Halloween special. I had a lot of fun being goofy on there, but uh, we'll do something fun for Halloween this year. But yeah, I'm sure Kenny will be doing over on Sci-Fi Fantasy. He'll be doing something special for that this year again, I'm sure, putting together the Halloween group build. We are going to run a couple of group builds over at the Model Shop community on the website. I need to get a moderator over there. I'm going to look for a moderator, somebody who's been there for a while, um, that can help, administer some of that stuff and come up with some ideas for some of the things that we want to do, some group builds and things like that. Yeah, me too, outsider. I wish Tamiya paint was cheaper. Spencer Will said, yeah, the resistance will usually go up with age. Yeah, I'm glad you guys are pleased with the B36 build. That one seems to be getting a lot of interest on my YouTube channel. I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of known for building starships, so whenever I build a car or a plane, my view count goes way down. But I'm not in it for the view count. I'm going to build whatever I feel like building here on the channel, and I know that even if it's a small minority of people, there's always people here that watch that appreciate all the different kinds of models and like seeing the different things that we do. So I've done everything here, I think, so far under the sun. I've done figures, cars, planes, boats, battleships, starships, and I plan on continuing that. That B-36 was a model that I wanted to do for a long time. Here's a little surprise I was talking about concerning Batman. I don't know if you guys could see it in the shelf in the background, but this little Batwing kit. I'm really surprised I didn't buy this sooner. I guess I think I thought it was smaller. But when I took it out of the box, I was like, wow, this is a nice sized kit with some super detailing and great opportunity to do a bunch of weathering and panel work on these wings. I think I'm going to do these wings and like some blue iridescent over that black so that it only shows up, when you turn it a certain way. And then, of course, put some lighting in it in the cockpit and everything. That'll be really cool. I always loved this vehicle from the first Michael Keaton movie. So yeah, I finally got around to buying that. Dale Strange is asking me about where I get my soundboards from. Dale, I get those from. Let me type that in here for you. It's there you go, Dale. They're out of Canada. I get my stuff pretty quick from them. Now, I was short on boards. I ran out of boards here, and I put in an order yesterday, and they told me there's going to be a little bit of a delay. It's probably because of this coronavirus stuff. Hopefully, I don't get shut down for saying that. But yeah, and if you're going to use them in any consequence, like more than a few, I would recommend buying like 10 of them because you get a discount, and I mean, they're around. I think I'm getting them for around $7 or $8 plus shipping a piece, and if you buy more, you get them cheaper. Wonderful little board for doing basic things like I'm using them for. The only thing, they're not a smart board like Ralph's stuff is though. Like I've explained, you can't. I mean, if you're going to put lights with it, they're going to be synced up with the sound. You can't have the lights come on separately when the sounds are not on. The only way to get around that is you have to put a little switch in line so you can turn it off when you don't want the lights to come on when you're playing certain sounds, and other times when you want it to come on. Yeah, I've seen that, Spencer. I might get on that Batman group build with that little bat plane. I'm not sure when I'm going to get to it. It might be a little while, but I think yeah, he says it's going on the rest of the year. Cut off the wings and you have a bat sub. Yeah, we'll think about that one, Eric. Dogs of War. Uh, yeah, the B-47 for sure, because that was a plane that Jimmy Stewart flies at the end of Strategic Air Command, the Boeing, and I always loved that little plane. And definitely the B-52. That's a kit that I never got as a kid either. And thankfully, those are still pretty easy to find and not outrageous. David O'Flanagan, what paint do you think gives the best steel effect? You mean like the chrome finish? What I just showed you, the VHT. Uh, there's a couple other brands out there, but I just happen to like the VHT because I've experimented with all of them. I've got the Rust-Oleum version. There's a couple of brands that sell it. Besides All-Clad, of course. All-Clad's the best, but the reason I don't use All-Clad because it's just too darn expensive. Um, and this looks just as good as All-Clad Chrome. And I'm not spraying that. I didn't. Uh, the nice thing about this stuff, let me grab the can once more and show it to you in case you guys missed it. If I can find it here. What did I do with it? Here it is. Um, this stuff gives you that beautiful chrome finish, but you don't have to spray the gloss black underneath of it. Like All-Clad, they tell you to do, you got to have a gloss black before you put this over the top. Don't have to do it with this stuff. You spray it over anything, and it looks immediately like beautiful chrome. It's as close to plating as you're going to get with a paint. And out of all the brands that I've tried, I guess it was probably 2 years ago now, I was reading a blog by somebody that was building a model car or something. And they had tried this stuff, and they said the same thing. They said, they had tried all this different, and he'd done some little chrome accessory parts on an engine or something. And he sprayed it with this, and he just raved about it. He said, man, it dries. I can touch it. You want to spray it in light coats, though. You don't want to, flood it on there either. But you still got to be careful on a big, big surface, flat surface where you're going to see any imperfection. Little small parts, not so much. But like on the wings of that plane, I won't touch this stuff for like 2 or 3 days after I spray it, just to be sure. But then once you seal it with that aqua clear, from All-Clad, it's going to have a protective shell on it, and you won't be able to, it won't smudge or anything like that anymore. So, but I'm going to lay a coat of that clear down, then do the decals, and then my panel painting and everything, because I don't want to put masking tape on that bare chrome paint. It could smudge it or something. So I'm going to make sure I got my clear on there, and then do all my panel painting. then lay down the decals, and then seal it all up at the end with one coat of clear and be done with it. But this stuff is really good, and it's not that expensive. You can buy it at, they have it on the shelf at AutoZone if you have an AutoZone in your area, and O'Reilly's, I believe, carries it, or you can order it online. They have it at Amazon and eBay. About $7 for this 11-ounce can, and that small little bottle of Alclad is like $9 just by itself, and this stuff is every bit as good. Stephen Powell, are you using a spray can to light block on the inside of your models or an airbrush? If it's a small part, small pieces, I'll use airbrush with a black paint. If it's a big model like an Enterprise or something like that, yeah, just regular rattle can, flat black. The cheap stuff that you buy at Home Depot that's 99 cents a can, don't use expensive paint for light blocking. Get the flat paint because it dries a lot faster. Then I'll top that with a coat of flat white. I don't like to use silver on the inside for my light blocking because silver makes the lights look weird. If you're using warm white, it makes them look too yellow. I use flat white for all my light blocking for the final, top coat. They're at Home Depot. They have that special paint, on the very bottom. It's in a plain, generic-looking can. It's 99 cents a can. That's what I use. Good night, Armando. Take care, buddy. Catch up with you soon. Okay, see if I miss anything else. Yep, getting time to wind it down here, guys. Trying to make these about a 2-hour show, so run it till about 9 o'clock. David O'Flanagan. Oh, you're doing a robot. Oh, the Kane robot from Robo. Oh, that's one of my favorites. Man, where'd you get a kit of that? I didn't know they made a kit of that. I've been waiting for him to come out of a kit of that. All I've ever seen was they make a small little, some Japanese company makes a small little action figure. And then, of course, the one from Phil Tippett, the statuette thing you could buy of it that was like $2,000 or something like that. And it's not even posable. It's just a static. I'd be interested in knowing where you got a kit of that. I'd love to build that. That's one of my favorites. No longer selling paint, David. Can't ship it. Anything that's flammable you can't ship anymore unless you have a special license. And my paint was solvent based, which I'm not hardly using anymore anyway. I'm using pretty much a lot of craft paints. Good night, Eric. Good to have you with us tonight. I haven't heard any word yet from the about the Nationals here in San Antonio that was supposed to be held in July. I'm guessing that they're probably going to cancel it, or move it back further. Hopefully not, but as soon as I hear anything, or unless anybody else has heard about it, I haven't checked in the last couple of weeks, but I'm hoping that we don't lose that date altogether and they move on to the next one, because it took us like 20 years of waiting to get that here. I know the local club, Alamo Squadron, they worked really hard on getting that. It'd be a big disappointment if they didn't have it. Oh wow, it's 3D printed. Well, I've got a buddy out there. Where's Omar? Maybe he can print that baby for me. I'd love to have that. Wow, would that be cool? One of the best robots ever for a movie. The movie itself, a lot of RoboCop fans don't like it. I like RoboCop 2. It's definitely better than 3. It should be themodelsshop.com, Derek. S19 7AQ, how did I get started building Star Trek models? Start building when I was a kid, like everybody. I'm an older fella. I grew up in the 70s. AMT had all those Star Trek models, and I was a rabid model builder when I was a kid. Models and comic books. So every time I got money for doing lawn work or my little paper route I had, we had a local Woolworths store, which some of you younger guys probably never even heard of Woolworths, but they carried all the Star Trek models. I would go down there and buy a Star Trek model like every 2 weeks and build it. And then I had to stop, like, got busy with life when I got married. Our kids came along. And then one night I was on YouTube in about 2007, I believe, or 2006, somewhere around there. And I saw a video of somebody putting lights in an Enterprise model. And I was like, wow, people are actually able to do that now because, we didn't have the technology back then. And so I got my first TOS when that kit first came out, and I've been doing it ever since. Yeah, you guys that are just now signing up at the model shop, be a little bit patient. And hopefully I'll recognize your name so I can skip that whole one part. If it's somebody's name I recognize, like say Leona Timber Company at gmail.com or something like that, I'll put you in right away. But literally, when I first opened it up, the first month, I had it on auto. I even had a anti-bot question in there, a Star Trek question. And I'll be darned if the old spammers and nut jobs, started flooding in there. It's like they live to hang out in those forums, even though they don't do anything. I say get a life and move on, but they just don't seem to want to do that. So like I said, I have to manually go in there. One of the main reasons I shut down Sci-Fi Model Action, out of 4,300 and something members we had there were only about maybe 1,800 people that were active. The rest of the people in there were all spammers and scammers. And you couldn't use the built-in system it had to go in there and get, parse all those people out. You had to do them all one at a time. So it was old technology anyway. Thus the reason for the new website. And plus, we moved on from just doing only sci-fi to all kinds of modeling. More people. You don't want to be too cliquey. You know what I mean? Not that many people model anyway, so I felt like it was better to have a forum that was interesting for everybody, all types of modeling. The Thompson shop. I'm looking forward to that kit. I'm not a big fan of Discovery, as everybody knows. I don't really like the show, but I really like the design on that Enterprise. The first kit they released was too small for me, but that other ship's going to be about 16 or 18 inches long, and I definitely will pick one of those up and build it. Favorite Star Trek model to build? Man, I would say the Enterprise bridge, the old AMT bridge. I love that thing. Putting all the lights in it and everything, lighting up all the screens. As a kid, I always wanted to visit the set, and walk on the original bridge. I also like the interior of the Disco Prize, as it's being called. The bridge, to me, was the best updated TOS bridge that I've seen. It had the little red accents like the original. It was laid out similar. You didn't have the... One thing I don't like about the bridge on Discovery is that people are like spread really far apart, and some of the people on the crew are like way back off in the shadows. You can't even see them. And don't even ask me who the bridge people are on the Discovery show. I have no idea who the characters are. That's what's so different about that show. It seems to be centered around, one main character and all that, and I don't really care for that. I like the diversity of the original show where every crew member was important. And I remember when I watched the original series, by maybe about the fifth or sixth episode in, I knew all the people on the bridge, like who they were and what they did, what their name was and what they did. Like I knew Uhura was in communications. I knew, Sulu was the helmsman, the other guy. Of course, they always had a couple guys in the background that were generic, that they changed out from show to show. The security guards, that one guy that used to sit in Scotty's station. But on Discovery, I don't even know who any of those people are. There's a bunch of people sitting back in the shadows, and you might hear them say something once in a while, but that's about it. there's one character on that show that like knows how to do everything, so you don't really need any of the other characters. That's kind of what I've seen in the limited amount of time I bothered watching it. I did like the episodes where they brought in Pike and the Enterprise and Spock. I hope they do a series on that. I'll give that a shot. Yeah, Dennis Piscani says it's an 18-incher. That'd be a nice size. I always thought that was a sweet size for a model kit. Right around the size of the original AMT, 18 inches or so. Um, that's going to fit on most people's shelves. It's not too small, not too big. The 350 scale monitors are great, but a lot of people don't build them because they don't have any place to put it. Thomas Johnson, yeah, I'm hoping for that new series with Enterprise, with Spock, Pike, and Number One. That would be good. The actors playing those parts were great. The guy playing Pike was awesome. The Spock guy, once they got past all of his, psychological problems that we never knew he had before, he seemed to be all right too. And the woman playing Number One was great. Let's hope we do see that. Gotta say, I wasn't really big on Picard either. Checked out the first couple episodes and then I lost interest in it. It it seemed like that show was taking a long time to build up to anything. Again, that's why I like the original episodic Star Trek, where you get a new story each week, and once in a while they would do a two-parter. But I think it's lazy writing when you drag out an entire plot for an entire season. To me, it's a lot. It shows a lot more talent when you have writers that can come up with a new scenario every week. New aliens, even the special effects people, the set builders and everything were a lot more challenged on like the original series and Next Generation, because every week they had to create a new set, new aliens, an entire new story. I don't want to drag. I have ADD anyway, so I'm not going to sit an entire season to find out what happened that should have been told in one or two episodes. I think that's one of the reasons why the original series and Next Generation were successful, because they were serialized like that. You got basically a new show every week. No question, the production quality of the new shows is excellent, though. It's movie quality. I haven't caught too many episodes of the Orville. I uh, I just I don't even really know what time it's on. I very rarely these days watch any kind of regular TV. I'm usually watching stuff on YouTube. I'm big on watching historical stuff, modeling stuff. You know, I'm not. I don't watch a whole lot of regular TV at all. But yeah, I don't want to knock it. If anybody's enjoying the shows, great. I'm glad that Star Trek is on. That's the one thing I will say. I'm not one of those people that hates on it. Like, I want it to be wiped out or erased or whatever. I'm glad there's some iteration of Star Trek on right now, that it's living on, and maybe it'll pick up a new generation of fans. Uh, you know, it's better than not getting anything at all. But I definitely would like to see some more on the timeline on the Enterprise before Kirk. The Pike story. Of course, we kind of already know what happens to Pike unless they go off canon on that. But um, okay, guys. Well, I don't see too many more specific questions coming in. I think I'm going to call this one a wrap. Always enjoy hanging out with you guys and finding out what's going on. Should be back next week. Now, I'm going to try to do these shows every week, but as we get into spring and summer, I'm going to be doing some traveling, going down to the beach to see my mom on the weekends and stuff like that. So there'll be a couple weeks where I may miss an episode. I'll try to let you know. It's hard for me to notify everybody because I don't have anywhere to post anything. Um, basically, if you don't see it by Saturday morning that the stream is going to be coming on, it's probably not going to be. I'll just put it that simple, I guess. If I don't have it posted by Saturday morning, it's probably not going to be a show that week. So I don't want everybody just sitting there waiting for it to come on and then find out the last minute. That one week that I missed was I was trying to broadcast, but it was a stream issue. Um, so yeah, we'll try to do these every week and just keep it going like it is. I had fun just sitting on the bench and working around, not having a lot planned out. Just kind of grabbing stuff and working on it. After we get a little bit more work done on the Battlestar, I'll probably move over to something else. Maybe I'll start on that Batwing or something. I got plenty of kits to work on, guys, from every kind of genre there is, so should be something interesting for everybody here. Okay, everybody, thanks for showing up tonight. I appreciate it. We'll catch you next week. I'll be putting out an update video tomorrow evening of the B-36, and like I said, things are looking like I'll probably get that one finished this week. I don't see why not, unless I get delayed in getting something. The only thing I'm waiting for is the aqua gloss, so they said that would be here Tuesday. You guys take care out there. We'll see you next time. Happy modeling. Good night, everybody.